We're live talking about the Squeedies.
That's right. Do you remember the Squeedies?
I don't. I wasn't on the news groups in the late 90s. So.
Well, if you remember the Squeedies, you're very, very old. Also very, very nerdy because it was the late 90s, and we were it was all and you were already on the internet talking comics. So that
Yep.
was very nerdy indeed.
Yeah. I can't even remember. I probably didn't get on the internet talking comics. Maybe Facebook.
Jesus.
I mean, I was talking comics on my blog earlier than that, but that was just to myself. I mean, nobody was talking with me. But I also had like lots of, when in the late 90s I was working at Marvel, so there's really not a lot of need to go on internet to talk comics in that case. So I probably didn't start going on the internet talking comics till after 2005 when I left Marvel, which makes sense. I think because I can remember what was the first one? Friendster, and then MySpace, and then Twitter and Facebook. Twitter and Facebook were about the same time. And what it was my same four friends. I signed up for it. My friend John, Rob, and Dave. The four of us would when Friendster came up, we signed up for Friendster. We're like, okay, now what do we do? I don't know, nothing. And then MySpace came up. Our same four signed up. We go, oh, now what do we do? I don't know, nothing. And then Twitter came along, and we all four of us signed up, and we're like, oh, now what do we do? I don't know, nothing. And then Facebook, like I said, I think Facebook and Twitter were the same time. Then the same
Twitter,
four of us.
On Twitter, you had to wait. You had to wait until the flat earthers came along.
Yeah, all of a sudden, everybody I knew signed up for Facebook. It was kind of crazy. It was because, like I said, for years it was just the four of us signing up for all this newfangled internet stuff, and none of my other friends. And all of a sudden, everybody was on Facebook. I was like, holy, that was what, 2008? I think Facebook first got big. I can't even remember. It's been so long, but I think that's the first dates I see in my memory. But it was kind of crazy. I was like, why this one? Had no idea.
I think it was the photos. You could do photos.
Eric P. says, the Warren Ellis, scandal noted, forum was the first place I talked comics on the internet.
Yeah, Warren Ellis had a forum and a newsletter, which you could sign up for to receiving the email. Then
I'm actually signed up for his current one. Orbital Operations, I think it is.
Yeah, and Bendis also had a forum, and then Mark Miller, who created Miller World. Yeah. But there was something else.
Was it Chip Zdarsky we were just mentioning has that one? Has an actual newsletter, that physical one. I was like, wow, look at that. It's like, one sheet folded in half, so it's 4 pages, but hey, it's kind of, cool. I not cool enough that I picked it up for free off the counter or anything like that, but maybe next week.
And there was something I signed up to, which was the comic book electronic marketplace or something, and it was just a collection of press releases. But then hidden in like page 4, there were Rich Johnston had his first smut column.
And I think there was a lot going on AOL too. Like I can remember what year.
Yeah, Wizard used to print AOL emails so you could get in touch with other AOLers.
Eric P says it was Delphi forums. And I still now people from there to this day. Okay, so he still knows people. Okay, those are used to chat with Mac Fraction and Kelly Sue. Yeah, know people, right? Because I can remember. I've told the story before about Amy Scott, the intern who died at Marvel, and I think that was 1994. And I remember Marie Javins. She was Marie Javins' intern, now editor-in-chief at DC Comics. And I can remember her saying she had to go on, I think it was an AOL Comics forum, and calm people down who were talking about the murder mystery at Marvel Comics. And she's like, it's no murder mystery. It's a tragedy. Somebody very young died. But so it was around, I think that was AOL. So the comics people were on talking online pretty early. Like I said, I wasn't on talk. I was of course on the internet 95, 90. I think I got my first computer at the end of 95. So my very first computer was December 95. And of course I got a modem with it. So I was on the internet, but I really wasn't doing any social media stuff, email and whatever. Whatever we did on the internet with dial-up, who can remember? There wasn't a ton to do, but everything, it's funny. I can still remember too, socially, at some point in the late 90s, if you didn't have email, all of a sudden you didn't get invited to stuff. Because sometime in the late 90s, things switched over from phone calls and physical invitations to whatever social event party was going on to email. And the people who were like, I don't want email, like weren't getting invited to stuff because they were out of the loop. Just like people later on and there's still people who aren't on social media, when everything, all the invites and stuff to social stuff usually goes out through social media. So people who aren't on social media are cut out of the loop for the invites. Eric P says, funny, I was at a memorial with people that knew Amy last Sunday. There we go. I forgot it was Eric P who went to the same high school as Amy Scott. Yeah, Marie had to calm people down on the AOL forums.
And I once saw a comment because Kurt Busiek was one of the first authors who was commonly in the in the news groups, and there I remember somebody getting aggravated with him over something, and then Kurt answered back in the same manner, and then somebody else said, "Oh yeah, you usually lose your cool pretty quickly. We remember you from the CompuServe forums."
That's right, CompuServe. Yeah, never had it, but I remember that. That was another service that you had sort of like AOL that you had to sign up for.
And we had the mailing lists. We had one on, man, what was that thing called? I can't remember. There was the Avengers mailing list, and that ended. And then it was replaced by the West Coast Avengers mailing list, which is about every Avenger, and Kurt Busiek was a member. And about a third of the posts were not the Avengers mailing list. They were about the Hey Kurt mailing list.
Eric P says there was also a point in the late 90s where DC Comics had forums. Yeah. I think it was a hot thing briefly in the 90s for like DC or somebody like that to have forums until they found out it cost money. Because you had to have people look after them and stuff like that.
Well, yeah.
Matter of fact, weren't Yahoo forums really big?
Yahoo.
I think so. I think there were Yahoo groups. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, Yahoo had bought e-groups, who had bought MakeList, and the Avengers mailing list was on MakeList. Yeah, I remember that.
Gore Vidal, how you doing? when I was required to get an email for my new job in the 90s, I rebelled by using the formal name from a character in the Age of Innocence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but a lot of us had nicknames. We didn't use our real name.
It was before every company had, their own email service and provided you with the email.
Mm-hmm.
And here's this just popped into my head. Here's a question that comes out of our last week's Watchmen discussion. I brought up the story Pictopia, the Alan Moore, Don Simpson story. And I remember it being his apology for the darkening of superheroes, because that's what the story was about. Then you pointed out, when you looked it up, that it actually came out before Watchmen, Pictopia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, when did the darkening of superheroes of the 80s happen? Because usually people say the Dark Knight. But it popped into my head, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, especially his depiction of Adam Strange. Have you read
yes.
Alan Moore's Swamp Thing?
Yes.
That was pretty dark. So I'm like, but I don't remember. And I was like, I wonder when. Clearly, Alan Moore was apologizing for his part, but I'm like, because like I said, most people say Dark Knight, but that Pictopia came out pretty quickly after Dark Knight, I think, because it was like this. I think it was before Watchmen. Yeah, Moore took over the Swamp Thing in '83, but it was probably '85 before that Adam Strange. But Swamp Thing definitely got darker and more horror-y. But I don't really see Swamp Thing as like a superhero getting dark, because he was like a horror character from the beginning, even though 70s DC horror comics didn't have much horror in them.
Well, you had Frank Miller's Daredevil, which I think gets dark pretty quickly because
maybe I forgot about Daredevil.
That issue where Daredevil picks on the Hulk. The Hulk's in New York doing whatever, and Daredevil decides to find him, and of course the Hulk mops the floor with him, and that was pretty. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris. That was pretty dark too.
Yeah.
Marvel Man, which you worked in Score Vidal points out, Marvel Man, which you worked on in '81, already took the superhero. Yes, I forgot about Marvel Man, but outside the UK, Warrior Magazine did. But when did Miracle Man hit the US?
'85.
'85. So that could be it too. That could be what he's apologizing.
Yeah, but Alan Moore was already in the US doing Swamp Thing.
And yes, I know, but
more important, he had already written for the man who has everything. Because I think that for the man who has everything,
Miracle Man didn't hit the It didn't get on any of us in the US's radar until '85. So that's before the Pictopia time period. I'm just trying to figure out. I don't know when, because Alan Moore certainly had a hand in it with Marvel Man. I completely forgot about that one.
Yeah. Still, I wonder who exactly was reading Warrior Magazine in the U.S.
My friend Bunch. He's the only one I know.
and certainly there would have been some professionals who had access to Warrior, even in the U.S.
Gore Vidal says Miller's Daredevil may be the beginning for U.S. superhero. Yeah, because it struck me as, like I said, Pictopia was definitely Alan Moore's apology for sort of the darkening of superhero comics in the 80s. And if it came out before Watchmen, I hadn't even, even though I have Anything Goes on my shelf in there and bought it, I don't, in my memory, it came out after Watchmen, but clearly it didn't. So I found that interesting. What would I guess? Even Dark Knight Returns might even be sort of the culmination of the darkening of heroes. That might not even be the start. that might be the end point almost
Right.
of when everything was taken over.
Well, the end point is the beginning of Image, because that's when it hits the ridiculous situation. It's gone.
No, but by end point I mean it's fully taken over.
Yeah, I would say with martial law.
Okay.
Martial law tips it, because then darkening becomes normal.
Right. I should say after Dark Knight was so successful,
Right.
everybody copied them. It became
Right.
it wasn't like Dark Knight was the end point. It was like the end point of the beginning.
Right. It's like when punk music becomes mainstream.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, because after that you have Suicide Squad, and and the Punisher gets his own magazine,
Right.
and yeah, we're done.
Right, right. Said Eric P. Is the Phoenix Saga maybe a starting point as it was edging towards what would come? Nah, I don't think the Phoenix Saga was particularly dark.
No, just because the character, people say that because Jean Grey died, and she was one of the main characters.
Right.
But still, I think Shooter was right in that they painted themselves into an editorial corner,
Right.
and they had to do something about it.
Having her wipe out a planet.
Yeah, but the idea was never that she was going to die. So it was, and the story itself, apart from the Phoenix dying, is epic.
Right. I think she became darker along with everybody else eventually. But I don't know if I'd put her story. I think Daredevil probably much darker than, but still not full Dark Knight dark. Mike's X Punisher from '86 is another one. Yeah, that he start. If they didn't wreck that, if they didn't editorially wreck that Punisher with the last issue, that could have been an influential evergreen.
Yeah.
But it was more important to the editor to get it out on time in those days, not unusual in those days, than to make it good. Because that was the one where like there was, who was the writer on that?
Stephen Grant.
Stephen Grant and Mike Zeck did like 4 out of the 5 issues. And then I think the story goes that Grant needed more time. He couldn't get it done in time. So
Zeck needed an extra week.
It was Zeck who needed the extra week. I couldn't remember which one of them quit because of the other one. And the editor was just like, no, we have to get this out on time. And now it's like no one ever reads that. Everyone loves the covers, but no one actually ever reads the comic of that first Punisher mini.
Yeah, I suppose people don't talk. There's so much Punisher material out there that that people stop thinking about it.
Yeah, because it hit hard when it first hit.
Sure,
but then it fizzled out because of that.
But it didn't fizzle out. I mean, the point of the mini series, I don't think they were thinking of evergreens. Marvel didn't think about that the same way that DC had, because DC already had Camelot 3000.
Right.
And Camelot 3000 was a trade paperback, so it was the beginning of the Warner Books library of comics. But at Marvel, they didn't think about that. So the miniseries was a test run to see if the Punisher could have an ongoing, and in that regard, it worked wonderfully.
Right.
Because
Eric P says I was thinking more of the whole Hellfire Club of it. They were kind of light dark.
No, if it's because of the sexual implications of about the existence of the club and how the women dress, it was just, I think it was just normal. It's social mores changing. The people in bikinis were regular on TV, so wearing lingerie wasn't that much of a stretch.
It always amazes me how much of superhero costume design from then on was based on like bondage gear. And it's like, there are other influences other than bondage gear, people. You don't have to grow bondage gear every time. And then when the X-Men wore all black leather in the movies, it got even worse. I'm like, come on. There's a whole history of fashion. You don't have to do bondage gear every time. Eric P saying the Teen Titans, the Judas Contract also started moving towards darker storytelling, as I recall. I don't think I read the Judas Con. I think I was out of the Teen Titans by then. I'm not 100% sure. That's the one where it turned out Terra was the traitor, I think.
Yeah.
I may have read a little of that.
Yeah. I mean, the Legion did it. They had Nemesis Kid. That was Jim Shooter when he was a teenager in the 60s. So, I think that every time Trigon appeared, he for a demon. I don't think that Wolfman and Perez had any issue portraying him doing extreme violence, like that scene where he takes Raven back to his throne world, and Trigon kills a little girl because she said he was scary. Yeah. But by the time we got that was a couple of years before the Judas Contract, so it's not really there. I mean, the Judas Contract works perfectly well for what was typical of a superhero comic back then. What made it stand out is less the story and more the storytelling. The entire Wolfman Perez run is very good. It's a very good read. The way that the characters are portrayed, that's what pulls you in, and then the rest is adventure after adventure. And the Judas Contract is part of it, but apart from that, I wouldn't say that it's dark. But if it seems dark compared to Silver or Bronze Age, I think it was just what was becoming normal. But it's not a game changer per se.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I would think maybe it started with Frank Miller's Daredevil, which was really a little more film noir than dark superhero, but still, that started it on its trend. And certainly continued with Alan Moore in Swamp Thing. I think because Swamp Thing is a horror, and he pulled superheroes in from the DC universe, like Adam Strange, and all of a sudden he was a SOB. And even there was a dark story with the Justice League, wasn't there?
Yeah, when the Parliament of Trees decide to kill all humanity by dumping oxygen in the atmosphere, and the Justice League are debating whether they should intervene or not.
That gets dark, and I think even though he did it previous to that, when Marvel Man / Miracle Man hit the US, that was really turned things dark too. And then Dark Knight Returns. Well, there was a step between Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil, and that was Ronin, which
but
was
that's
not really dark, and it wasn't superheroes. So
right, it's not superheroes, but what it had going for it was that Frank Miller was already famous, and okay, let's do Ronin. So it's not the same thing. I suppose the problem with Ronin is not becoming as influential as it should have, is that it's not a superhero comic.
Yeah. But so then it was finally Dark Knight, the success of Dark Knight, that made everyone go, "Ho, this is our formula." The Gore Vidal. It's been my position for years that Miller on Daredevil and Moore on Swamp Thing changed the medium. I think so, but I think it was Dark Knight Returns that was the most influential in the end. Where did Miller's Wolverine mini fit into that? Oh yeah, forgot about that. So that.
Yeah.
that continued the noir, I think. It still
Sure.
wasn't dark, but it was definitely noir.
Right. Well, he kills Shingen at the end, and I suppose that's what would make it dark, but you kind of expect it from Wolverine.
Right.
Or at least it was a natural progression over what they had done, like the like during the Dark Phoenix saga when he comes back from the sewer and attacks the Hellfire Club, and there's no one around to stop him. And the Wolverine miniseries is a natural progression. Now if you do a Wolverine story, you have to make it hard boiled.
You can do that with a superhero book?
You can.
And that Eric Pease, I don't think it was dark, but it was darker than what had been before. Yeah, I think we went through like film noir first with Miller's Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolverine, the Miller Claremont Wolverine. But to me, the main takeaway from the Miller Claremont Wolverine was that was the first time they turned him from a teenager into a 1,000-year-old samurai.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the main takeaway from that. That kind of overshadows everything else in my mind. So it's tough for me to judge. What do you think, Chris? What we're talking about the 80s and when superheroes turned dark, and exactly we're trying to pinpoint exactly when.
Yeah, you guys are splitting hairs on levels that I would never be able to get to. I mean, I know generally I understand. Yeah. I generally understand what you're saying.
Right.
But
you weren't there for that.
I was buying comics when Dark Knight and Watchmen hit.
Okay.
But I had no concept for I knew everybody was talking about Dark Knight and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But I still didn't. There's no way I could really grasp that this was like a big shift.
But if you want to talk splitting hairs, you should have seen us last week talking about Watchmen. We had I was at Howler Mouse's channel. We had a 2-hour discussion on the text pieces of Watchmen. And even after those 2 hours, it still spilled over here.
Right. Last week we were talking about it here too. And Gore Vidal says, the Miller Claremont Wolverine made the character interesting to me. Up until that point, he was a berserker with little character. The miniseries and Paul Smith's brief run on X-Men matured the character. See, it was the complete opposite to me. As soon as they made him a 1,000-year-old samurai, I was done with him because I'd read that character 1,000 times before. The wise, mystic, immortal character from the East. I liked him better as the teenager who couldn't control himself and had to learn to control himself. So it's like I was out on Wolverine after that Miller Claremont team up. I really have not read much of him since.
The minute that they showed Wolverine without his mask on, what was it, issue 97? Yeah, the idea that he was a rebellious teenager is gone. He doesn't. He looks older than everyone else on the team. Even
that was normal comic book drawing. I didn't even think about that.
Wasn't Banshee also old?
Banshee was one of the older ones on the X-Men.
Yeah.
Wolverine was supposed to be young. He was supposed to be a teenager originally. At least as presented in the, they were all supposed to be teenagers, and Banshee was the older one. But they're always drawn like they're 28 to 40 years old. So it's tough to tell sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember when Neil Adams there was a scene when they dropped the Angel off at Carl Lycos's medical practice, the first time he turns into Sauron. And then Scott and Jean go back home in Warren's car, and because Adams was inked by Tom Palmer, Scott and Jean looked very, very old, very wrinkly.
Like that's perfect. It's like the only time Spider-Man ever looked like a teenager was like in the Ditko issues. As soon as Romita took over, he was like this handsome 28-year-old guy. Drawing teenagers isn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Wilson's on an iPad this week in Sideways. What's up with that? Did you get a new iPad, Wilson? Oh, we'll have to see when he comes back. But the first comic I have to show off for the week is my Chris Geruso one. Phases of the Moon Knight #3.
All right.
There it is. Hello, that's very good. Very, very good.
Luckily, my comic shop had a shelf copy of it because they don't always have shelf copies of everything. But he's got a 4-page story back here where he gets to draw many Moon Knights, including Super Skrull Moon Knight. Who's he?
Was that your idea?
Yeah, I wrote it. Well, originally, I mean, that particular gag, it's like, how many different kind of moons can there be? How many moon characters?
Right.
So it's just, super moon is a thing. So what would the character based on super moon look like?
Super
and
Skrull.
I initially drew, well, I initially drew a Superman costume that was all moon knighted up. So there was like the Superman's chest emblem with a circle in the middle of it, and he was red, yellow, and blue. And Marvel said that the lawyer said no to that. They're too scared of DC taking legal action over an obvious parody. I thought parody protected that. So then I turned it to the Super Skrull.
There we go.
So was it not obvious? Was it not obvious he's the Super Skrull?
It was obvious he was the Super Skrull. Yes, I just found it amusing that he was the Super Skrull.
You could have done a take on the easy title Moon Girl, which became a girl romance.
But it turns out, not having read Phases of the Moon Knight before, this is an anthology series with stories of different Moon Knights. Like the first story is done by the Justina Ireland writer, Daniel Bayliss, or artist, or no, the first one is done by Yuji Keiko, story and art, Moon Knight Chan. And it's very Japanese. I don't know if she's actually Japanese or that's a pen name for some Marvel editor.
Whoa. Wow.
But it appears it's either somebody who's Japanese or somebody who's copying Japanese style. But it's the story of oh, that's right. This is the cover story of these. I really couldn't figure out everything that was going on in this first issue because Khonshu just like gives Moon Knight powers to people who are about to die or something like that. So like there were these 3 kids who you guess were about to die, and Khonshu was like, "I will give you one of you Moon Knight powers. The other one's gonna die." So all of a sudden, fast forward to them kicking them some ass of some, I don't know, some criminals, and then it flashes back to them, and the two kids are like, "No, save our brother who's gonna." So it's like I don't know if all 3 became Moon Knight or that he brought the kid back from the dead to become Moon Knight. It was a little confusing what was happening, but there was lots of ass kicking and action lines and stuff like that, and weird giant monster. So that was the first story, and the second story took place in the future. And I guess these are all official Moon Knights now. The second story takes place in the future, New American Wasteland, 5 miles from the containment zone. The not too distant maybe it's Old Man Logan's future. I don't know. But there's this woman, there's this teenage girl and her parents who run this general store, and bikers come in and kill the parents and the girl, and Koshnu's like, hey, you want superpowers to get your vengeance? And she's like, sure. But then she's got, I think Mark Spector Moon Knight is like a specter. He's talking to her, talking through her being Moon Knight. So that was, and then we come to Chris's story, which it was my favorite story of the three. So, but I don't want to give away Chris's jokes, but I enjoyed them.
Now, having not read any of that storyline that I'm goofing on, were you able to follow it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the goal.
Because his main joke is there's a lot of Moon Knights, and the fact that they've got so many Moon Knights in just the first two stories. There's at least 5 Moon Knights. That, like, I can't even figure out which of the 3 kids is Moon Knight. Could be in. So the jokes actually landed pretty well because of that. Can you hear us, Wilson?
I can hear you guys now. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. At least I can. Oh. Now Chris has gone silent. All right. Everybody's turning their.
I'm on the app through my iPad. For some reason, Chrome has been crashing my main computer. I don't know what it is.
That's fun.
So I was like, it's like, all right, I'll try it on the iPad. When I tried it on the iPad, it seemed to not want to work. And then that's why it was all sideways. I couldn't hear you at all. So I am on through StreamYard's app, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be working at the moment.
Okay, that's good. Eric P says, speaking of Paul Smith X-Men, I might have to get that artist edition of his run that is coming out. Oh, I didn't know that one was coming out. He's got a question for Chris that we'll ask when Chris shows up again, because I think he just dropped out. But yeah, I liked the story in this. It was good stuff. Wilson, you actually have a extra gray. I think when you dropped out before, your little gray box didn't drop out in my StreamYard. It's actually still here. And I'm afraid to kick it out because it'll kick you out.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah, kick it out. If anything, I'll sign back on.
I'm going to try kicking it out. Let's see. Kick from studio. Kick guest.
Yeah, see what happens.
All right, you're still here. Just kicked that one.
Okay. Yeah. So I also picked up that Moon Knight because Chris's backup story. This is the cover that was available. I would have got whatever the normal cover would have been, but I just grabbed an issue that was there that was like, all right, I guess that looks cute. I'll pick that one.
Yeah, this is cover A. I think this was the only one that was there.
Oh, okay.
Have you got a chance to read it yet? Oh, there's Chris again.
I have not. I've only picked it up. And while you were talking about it, I was skimming through it. It is pretty artwork. Text is really big.
That's in the Japanese style ones.
Yeah, I think this was probably done in a more Japanese style size.
Yeah.
And then they, at Marvel, they blew it up to be a larger size.
Eric P. also got a copy of Phases of the Moon Knight #3. And he asks, Chris, do you have any more upcoming stories we can look out for?
As of now, no.
He's got covers we can look out for.
No. Do have some covers. I got Eddie Brock Carnage and All New Venom #1s. And the X-Men Connected covers.
X-Men Connected. So how was New York Comic Con, Wilson?
I enjoyed it. I attempted to go live from the con a few times.
I saw that
Yeah.
on Paulo's channel. Yep.
Yeah. Of course, the connection are terrible in the place. Uh, and I did a lot of walking of that con. Saw many of things and um, attempted to look for some stuff. Since I didn't plan to go to the con, it was kind of a last minute thing. I didn't really have like a plan for the con. So I just showed up and just wandered around for a while. Took a few
Yep.
videos,
I,
got
I
to see some cool things, but all in all,
I
it was,
saw
it
you. I
was
saw you
fun.
posting TikToks of like some of your buddies who had comics coming out. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah. So it was like, oh, since all my friends are working on, in the industry, why not show off a few things
Right.
for them and what they're, you know, what they're showing off, selling their wares, so to speak. So that was fun to do.
What days did you go?
I went Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Oh, so
I
you're there
did
for a
I go
while.
Thursday? I was there for a while. Think I was I think I was there for Thursday. I didn't go Wednesday. I think it was Thursday when I got the call. Hey, do you want to come by for a day? And the badge, I had a retails badge, and so I went for a day, thinking I was only going for the day, only to find out that it was like, oh, I could keep the badge because my friend who put this all together was able to get another badge that he needed for his sister because he was bringing his whole family down. And then it
Right.
turned out they end up getting an extra badge somewhere. So it's like, okay, you could keep the badge. So it was great that I didn't have to. I wasn't manning a table, and I didn't have to show up there at 9 o'clock when it opened up. I
Right.
usually wandered in around noonish, and then just walked around and I had a good time.
Socialized.
Basically, it was a lot of socializing. I got a couple of those con promises to do work type of things that you always get at cons. You always accept every job offer because maybe one will pan out. So, and I did get a couple of messages recently. So one of the projects may be happening. So it was good. It was a good. I had a really good time. It was fun. I didn't really pick up much comic book wise, just like some of the freebies that were given away.
Right.
And I bought like an action figure for my brother.
Boy, you and your brother buy each other action figures an awful lot.
Yes, because it's like you never know when you're going to see something, and it's like, oh, okay, they have this. I know he's been wanting it, and there's
And it's
always
like,
texting back and forth.
I'm not buying an action figure for me.
Right, that's the
Buying it for my brother.
rationale. It's
That's
not for
okay.
me. It's for him.
It
And
doesn't
since
count
we
as me having too many action figures.
exactly, and since we don't really overlap too much, I
Okay.
live vicariously through his collection. And it's like, oh, I don't have to worry about buying that. That's his. So it works out that way.
Speaking of Comic Cons, one of the books I bought this week off of eBay was Bad Weekend by Brubaker and Phillips, an ex-library copy. What did this cost me? $8, I think. Shipped and taxed. It originally went for $17. But this was one that originally appeared in their criminal series as monthly issues. There was only 2 issues, but I think it was the last. It was the last thing they put out before they switched over to OGNs. And I actually have the 2 issues, but then they're like, "Oh, we're going to add some extra pages and put it out as a hardcover book like the rest of their stuff." But I never got it then. Even though I liked the story. And I finally just this like last week, I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can find that one just for the heck of it, because see how cheap I can get it. like I said, $8 shipped and taxed. I was like, okay, I'll get this one. And this one takes place in the comic book world. I think it takes place in the late 90s. It gives an exact year, either 97 or 99 or something like that. And it's the story of this guy right here is loosely based on Gil Kane, Alex Toth, Stan Drake, I guess. I don't know much about Stan Drake, but one of the plot points is he was in the car with another famous cartoonist when that famous cartoonist died in a car crash, which is what's his name? It just flew out of my head. Alex Raymond?
Yep.
Alex, yeah, died in the car crash in Connecticut, and Stan Drake was in the car with him and lived. So that was like a turning point in this guy's life when he was the one in the car crash who lived. But he's just kind of this and they also I didn't realize that this was a phrase that was used to describe, I think it was Alex Toth, they said, but it describes this guy too. He was a master without a masterpiece. And so, and of course, this guy's been, they mentioned, there's Kelly Green, Stan Drake. So it's kind of an amalgam of a few guys from that era. And he famously went through a lot of assistants. And so this is the story of, there's a Comic-Con, I think it was in California, I can't even remember. And one of his old assistants gets called up by who's not really in the comic book biz anymore. Matter of fact, they mentioned he went into his father's business, he said. And so he's like shepherding the old guy around for the weekend at the Comic-Con. Except the old guy's got his own agenda. He's going around settling some old scores, and he's looking for some artwork that somebody stole from him. And it eventually turns out that his exes, and of course there's lots of backstory going on too. It turns out his ex-assistant, the business his father was in, was thief. So the old guy's like, do you know somebody who we can rob this artwork that somebody stole from me back? So then they go on that little adventure. And it was a fun, bitter look at a bitter old guy in the comic industry, and how he got screwed over and is looking to get some back. So it's a fun story. Brubaker and Phillips. Like I said, I just decided, you know what? I want the collected edition of that one because it's cheap. Has anyone ever read this particular one? I know you guys haven't read much Brubaker and Phillips, right?
No.
I bet that thing's going to get published here, maybe next year.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Good stuff. Bad Weekend. Far and away the best work from one of the best teams in the history of comics. Brian K. Vaughan says that. I love how some of these guys can really... Speaking of which, where is it? It was in Moon Knight. They had they had a little tribute to, where'd it go? John Cassidy. And the Kevin Feige, Dan Buckley, and C.B. Cebulski all wrote nice little things about him. But they were so corporate. I was just like, John approached his art in the same way he did everything in life, fearlessly. What made him so good at what he did, from the soft touch needed on certain lines to the bold bravado, which is an insult, of the shots he'd often choose. John made every page better by putting 100% of himself into every composition. And I was like, man, I really wish I could find the stuff they really felt about him, the nice stuff. Because it's like, his legacy will live forever. I mean, they're nice, pleasant things they wrote. I got nothing against them really, but it's just kind of like, it's just such corporate speak that it made me go, a little bit. Even though I didn't know John Cassidy, I know he was more interesting than that.
Very much more. And just looking at it, it just seemed like, did they just have someone else write it all and they signed their names to it? Because it almost seems like the same type of writing in all three of them.
John is one of the defining creative voices of his generation, whose work will be celebrated for years to come. Doesn't sound like it sounds like AI wrote it.
Yeah.
Or at least the PR department. I was just kind of like, I mean, it's nice that they did it. But it's just so meaningless what they wrote. I was just like, John's art made the most fantastical situations feel grounded and real. Like you can plug and play that for just about any artist who died. There's a little more realism in his, but I was just kind of like, I would like to see something real, but that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
That just stuck out to me as I was reading this. Could just be that I'm not a huge fan of corporate speak. But it was nice that they said nice things about John.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just know he was more interesting than that.
Completely. He definitely was.
And I know those guys know he was more interesting than that. But, Mm-hmm. Read anything lately, Chris?
Some Johnny Quest.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah, I read I read the first issue of the new one.
How was it?
From Dynamite. It's pretty cool.
They've got a couple issues for that.
The hell just happened?
I don't know. Somebody ate
colors went away.
You know what? It was actually a fun read because it's really stupid and it doesn't matter. Deadpool team up. That thing's probably the best Marvel comic out there.
Deadpool team up. Is that the one Liefeld is doing?
Yeah.
Okay. That's his last Marvel work, right?
Yeah. So the Hulk just shows up in Weird World because reasons, and Deadpool shoots him in the face
for reasons.
Yeah, that doesn't matter why.
Just an excuse to draw cool things.
Yeah. That's exactly the plot of Deadpool team up, and the issue ends with Major X showing up. Nobody's expecting.
I did not check that one out. Is that the first issue that's out, or
no? It's the third.
The third already. Okay.
Yeah.
How many issues is it going? 5, 6?
I don't know, but if he wants to do 60, I'm all for it. I'll buy the omnibus.
What was the last thing I read by him? It was something from the New 52. Was it? Did he do Grifter?
Was he the one of the Grifter?
I don't know.
He was writing it.
He was writing it at least. He may have been doing layouts too. But I found it so amusing because, like you said, things would come out of nowhere. It'd be like, oh, okay. Things would come out of nowhere.
Exactly.
I'll show you something here's something that amazes me just in life. I picked up another one of these New York Giants jersey cards. Sterling Shepard. You guys probably have no idea who he is because why would you? But and it cost me $4.55, tax and shipping included. But the amazing thing to me is I got this from Hawaii, and it came here in 4 to 5 days. And it cost 97 cents to mail. How freaking amazing is that? Forget the card, forget everything. I got this card in 4 to 5 days for 97 cents. That's crazy. How many thousands of miles is it from Hawaii to New York? 6? I don't even know.
No idea.
But to mail this same card to Canada, I don't know how far is the Canadian border from us in New York? A few hundred miles away? I don't even know.
Probably less than that.
It would cost $10.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have to pay the contraband tax.
But I just find that amazing. 97 cents. That's how much they'll, there's a little 97 cents U.S. postage to go from Honolulu, Hawaii to here in New York. It's like, what? How's that possible? People put down the mail system all the time, but that's crazy. To be able to get me this card.
And that's also on a discount because eBay has a special deal with the post office about mailing cards.
Right.
And it, because the next step up is like $4.75 or something like that. And they were able to do some sort of deal where as long as the envelope is under 5 inches, 5 by 7 inches, it stays within that price range.
And it can't be a stiff envelope either. I think that's one.
No, it can't. There is a type of stiff envelope that eBay makes.
Uh-huh.
It's a very thin cardboard one that is allowed to go through it.
And usually these, I guess that these holders are allowed to go through too.
Yes,
because usually every card gets mailed in one of these.
Yes, the top loaders.
But all the freaking way from Hawaii. That's crazy. Have you read any comic books lately, Paulo?
I did check out the Deadpool team up. I should probably gonna take a couple of maybe Liberty Project with me on the train ride tomorrow, and I'm gonna read that.
Liberty Project
from Eclipse Comics.
What was that? Was that the one that somebody? What year did that come out? Liberty Project from Eclipse.
Around 1990, I think.
That may have been as I was at the comic shop on Wednesday morning. There was somebody buying a set of Eclipse comics. I think it may have been Liberty Project because I was like, oh, there's an Eclipse comic I've never heard of. Was it a team book?
Sort of,
because I remember a bunch of characters on I think it was Liberty Project. I was like, that must have been like a late 80s because I kind of fell off. I bought a lot of Eclipse comics in like the mid 80s, but by the late 80s, Liberty Project basically a dry run for the Thunderbolts. Eric P says, "Oh, interesting."
Well, yeah, in a way. I think John Byrne copied some ideas for Next Man. Although I don't think he would ever admit it, because
who did Liberty Project?
Kurt Busiek and James Fry.
All right.
And if Byrne copied something from Busiek, he would never admit it. Because you'll recall that when they brought back Jean Grey for X Factor, Burns purposefully misspelled Busiek's last name because he had the idea that Jean Grey was still stuck at the bottom of Jamaica Bay.
Right. I remember that. I also bought this week. I decided to get the other cover for Monster Piece Theater. This is the Tom Scioli. Got Godzilla versus Gatsby. I didn't even see this cover last week when I picked up. I picked up the Fantastic Four cover because I didn't even see this one. Then I saw this one online. I was like, oh, maybe I can track that one down. But I actually had a shelf copy. Have you read this yet, Wilson?
No, I picked it up today.
Okay.
I picked up last week's books and this week's book today,
Okay.
so I haven't even gone through it.
I picked this up last week and really liked it.
And it was because I saw your video beforehand is how I knew this cover existed, because I had all intentions of just picking up the Fantastic Four cover, so I didn't know this existed until your video. But
Right.
if I saw it on the stands, I would have picked it up. I had to dig behind the comics though to find it.
Okay.
It was like because the way they have it on Midtown, they have all their books, especially when it was released, would all on the same shelf. So you kind of have to dig through to find the other ones. And when I saw your video on it, I knew I was going to pick it up. So it's like, okay, I got to grab that.
I think I showed off the covers in the back, right?
I don't know. I don't recall if you did.
I probably did because I didn't have the other cover, so I probably showed. I remember because I didn't know that cover existed either until I looked at this.
Right, because I only saw the Fantastic Four one when it was advertised.
Oh, by the way, did you ever read this Godzilla War for Humanity?
I did pick up a few issues. I don't know if I got all of them.
Yeah, I only got 2 issues of it, like randomly, but I might have to pick it because I enjoyed it a lot. I liked the who's it, Andrew McLean and Jake Smith. I really liked the artwork in it. I remember. Yeah. I'll have to look for the collected edition. But yeah, what I really liked about this was Tom Scioli did an excellent job with it, and he dropped in actual quotes from the Gatsby book, where like completely recontextualizing them. Like it didn't even matter where they came from in the book. He found a place where they worked here. So it was well done. And Godzilla attacks a Gatsby party. That was just funny.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
mainly
it was good
because
stuff.
of that.
I enjoyed it.
Just because
I'll
fit them
put
into a classic.
Yeah, I'll put this in my Gatsby collection.
Yes.
My Gatsby collection. What are you working on tonight, Chris?
I'm coloring some of my Marvel Universe handbook commissions.
Ah, okay. And how do you color them?
Photoshop.
Okay, they've been colored on the computer.
Yeah, he's always asked for colored commissions, like digitally colored.
Okay, so you give him the original art?
Give him the original art, and I send him the high-res files.
Okay. Do you give him a print of the, or do you not have a printer? He makes his own print.
No. Just got the files, and he can print them if he wants. He tells me, like, if you want to sell prints, go ahead and print them.
Right.
But prints are a tough game for me.
Yeah. Because I know you've made prints before, but keeping them in good shape and dragging them
in good shape is challenging. Yeah, dragging them around. So like I put them in top loaders.
Right.
But yeah, they just people look at them and they go, "Wow, these are cool," and then they walk and then they move on.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
I'd totally buy a T-shirt if you had one.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, somebody was asking me if I'm going to do prints of the Venom covers, or I was like, you're not even going to buy one. You're the one asking me. You're not going to buy it. You think you'll buy it. I believe you think you'll buy it, but you won't. So, and then it's like.
At least when you ask them, are you going to buy what? Are you going to buy one? No, I just wanted to see if you had one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want
But,
one, but other people might.
Yeah,
Huh.
ran
Yeah,
into
so that's
that
what I'm
plenty
doing.
of times at cons. You should make this. You should do that. And it's like, are you going to buy it? Because I have stuff here you can buy right now.
It's not what I want.
Mhm.
They just want other stuff.
So at
You know
the
what? You should
comic
have
book
a cheese platter.
The cheese platter.
Everybody wants a cheese platter.
So I picked up a facsimile at the comic book shop.
What did you get?
The Amazing Spider-Man 261, the
Okay.
Charles Vess cover. And I need to dig out my original one because I remember the cover, but I don't remember it looking this way. I feel like this is not the right coloring on it, although it's a Charles Vess painting. And I don't know if it was just the way they printed it back in the 80s looks different than the way it looks now. For some reason, to me, to my eye, I think it looks off, like darker.
It looks darker.
It to me, yeah, it looks darker than the way it originally printed.
Because I remember that cover in my memory, it's lighter, but who knows who knows how reliable my memory is.
Right, and that's the thing. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I do enjoy the Charles Vess Spider-Man covers. There's not too many of them, but he did quite a few in that time period. And then when I grabbed it, it was just like, that just looks dark. It looks like the colors are off, which would be weird because, technology's better. But again, it was like one of those things where it's like even the blue on Spider-Man does not look correct.
It's looking violet.
Yeah. So it's like, I think I'm going to pick it up anyway, just because, I like the book. I like the artwork. But when I was looking at it, it's like, that just seems to be off. And I thought, well, maybe it was just the lighting in the comic book shop. And it's like, no, all the other books look fine. But it was just like, that's interesting. I'd dig up my original one to see if I could compare them.
Mm-hmm. Have any of you guys been getting those Facebook ads for facsimiles from Pre-Code Horror Facsimiles Kickstarter?
No,
they've been all over my Facebook. It's an interesting idea, but they're freaking expensive. I assume they're public domain. Mm-hmm. And they're doing facsimile editions of famous pre-code horror books. Except if you click on the comments, almost everybody complains that they're too expensive. Because I think it was like $300 for the set. I can't remember how many comics were in it, but it was like $15 a comic. And people, of course, were like, well, maybe I'd buy individual ones, but everybody's like, too expensive, too expensive, too expensive. Other people are like, if it's too expensive for you, then you're not the person they're aiming at or something like that. But I was just like, wow, I would buy a pre-code facsimile horror, maybe even for $15, but not $300 for the whole set. I'm just like, oof. Especially since I don't even know how good they are.
Yeah, I have no idea what they look like, if they did any work to it to make it worth that much.
I would hope they did some work to it to get them up to standards.
A facsimile, they would have to. Well,
yeah,
I would hope they would.
Right.
But at that price point, it's like I may just find some of them, download them myself, and just clean them up myself.
I have done that before, just for fun. Write a little action to clean things up.
So this is another case of I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah.
If these were actual facsimiles, they should retail for 10 cents. Because that's what's on the cover.
Don't worry, they still have to say 10 cents on the cover. That's how they get around that.
Yeah.
Don't you worry. One comic that I bought this week that I'm unsure of if I liked it or not was Savage Sword of Conan, number 5. And it's got Jeff Isherwood art, who was a Conan artist from the 80s. I don't know if he goes back to the 70s or not. I remember from the 80s. And this is a story of King Conan. And it's actually continued, so there's a part 2. So it's a long story, about 50 pages. But the reason I'm not sure if I like it or not is the story seems kind of, at times, a little too modern to fit into Conan's world. Because he's King Conan at this point, and he's on a... He's where is he? He's in some other he's like in a country. What country does he rule? Aquilonia.
Yep.
And he's in some country near Aquilonia, trying to make peace with them. There's like country next to Aquilonia is always fighting amongst themselves, and Aquilonia wants to see if they can make peace within that country, or if they're too barbaric too. Meanwhile, he takes a little. He takes a little side quest to take down the Witch of Graskal, the terror of the Brythunian borderlands. So I guess he's in Brythunia. I don't remember the name of all these countries. So he takes her down, but doesn't kill her. And now he's like... Now we get into like the Salem witch trials, because first of all, the Brythunians just want to kill her. Conan's like, no, we're going to where you said you're going to put her on trial. You put her on trial. So the Brythunians who try to kill her more than once, Conan stops them, and then these polar bears come out and try to stop them too. But then the polar bears back away. But anyway, eventually they bring her back to they bring her back and put her on trial. And of course, it's a Salem. Actually, it's more like a Monty Python. So I guess it's more like a European witch trial, because they blame her for the crops dying. They blame her for this. They just come out with a litany of stuff that happened and say she did it. The witch. But meanwhile, the people who are hunting her down, the witch finders, are sorcerers too. So it's kind of like, oh, but they're not doing official sorcery. And it's like, it just makes no sense.
Right.
That her brand, the witch's brand of sorcery would be so taboo, and everybody else's sorcery is A-okay.
If they were Stygians, I would understand, because the worshipping Seth trumps all of the other gods in Stygia, but there it shouldn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, but even with Seth, I don't think they'd hunt down every witch around. I mean, no. They'd be like, "Yes, Seth's going to kill you if you get in his way." But it seemed so modern in its witch hunt angle.
It sounds like an extra Solomon Kane story that they had lying around. It's like, we'll put Conan. Yeah. No one knows.
It's like, I find it hard to believe there'd be any kind of witch hunt in Conan times when there's sorcerers everywhere.
Yeah.
Why would witches be especially? Of course, all the witches were women too, which is once again modern. That's the anti-woman witch angle doesn't seem at home in a Conan story. That's what bothered me about it. Other than that, it was okay. I enjoyed the Jeff Isherwood art. I haven't seen Jeff Isherwood art in a while. Then there was a couple stories in the back. And it's like they even have, here they are, the witch hunters. with the last witch they're killing, and he kills her with sorcery. And it's like, this makes no sense. But other than that, it was a good I took very good advantage of lots of panels and the big open 8.5 by 11 size. Good black and white. So like this, I've decided I'm just going to get an issue of Savage Sword every now and again. If I see one on the, and I've got, like I said, I only had 3 comics, I think, on my pull list this week. So that's why I was able to get that extra cover Monster Piece Theater and Savage Sword. So I was like, and Moon Knight 3 would have been on my pull list, except I didn't. The final order cutoff came before I knew which issue it was. Let's see what. And the new 62 Lefty Blue says in the new previews, PS Art Books has Phantom Lady 22 and 23 going for $16 each, facsimiles. I wonder if that's the same ones who putting out the Kickstarter. And the Eric P is surprised you didn't get Dwellings All Hallows Eve special number 1. I would have gotten it. I don't know if I pre-ordered it because I think you mentioned that on my YouTube. You commented on my YouTube thing, and it definitely wasn't at the comic shop this week. If I had seen it on final order cutoff, I would have ordered it. I have a vague memory of maybe ordering it. I don't know. So it could have been shorted. I could have not ordered it. Either way, I'm going to see if they can reorder it for me because was that Jay Stevens, right? I very much enjoyed Dwellings. So, like I said, I have a vague memory of ordering the Halloween special, but I didn't even remember that I didn't even remember that vague memory until you mentioned it. So we'll have to see. 62. Yeah, I pick up all Jay Stevens stuff. I only really discovered him with Dwellings, I think. I know, who was it? Carl Bowlers, who we worked with at Marvel, commented on something on one of my videos, I think once. He's like, oh, good to see Jay Stevens is still around. And I was like, still around? What did he do back in the day? I think Carl worked with him a little bit on some stuff. I forget.
I saw Jay Stevens' art for the first time over 20 years ago. And it was in French.
Huh. I still have my Jet Cat comic, says 62 Lefty Blue. It was in French, Jay Stevens.
Yes. Jay Stevens drew the first crossover, the first intercompany crossover between an American comic character and the continental European comic character.
Uh-huh.
A 6-page story featuring Nexus and the demon Wampus from the French publisher Lug. Back when Jean-Marc L'Officier was involved in the Semicverse, when they brought back the Lug characters after the Swedish publishers Semic had bought them. L'Officier was not the editor, but he was the plot master. And they did put out the comic in English around 2004. It's there was a mini series called The Strangers, and that Nexus story is one of the backups in one of the issues.
I have to show you the back cover of this, Conan, because there are so many basic typesetting errors in this blob of copy that it's unbelievable. I don't even know how this happens. Let me show you this. Look at the extra space between Dark and Agnes. The extra space between From and Alex over here. The extra space in the middle of the word first. It's just like, what? That's
Someone
just
changed the
crazy to
font.
me. I don't know.
I'm guessing there was a font change somewhere, and they didn't account for the changes. That's the only thing I could think that would have that kind of weirdness.
Yeah, that's because at first I thought usually when you see extra space like that, it's because it's force justified, which means the program forces all the lines to line up on either side, which means they have to stick extra spaces in the middle. Which is why most people don't use force justified. But this one is center justified. So there's no, it would never put, they had to put those extra spaces in themselves. So I just saw that and went, how does that even happen? I don't know. Let's see, is there a designer listed amongst all these?
Well, isn't that a Helvet? That's some standard Helvetica? I bet they forgot to add the font to the PDF, and they couldn't print it.
Could be. There was no font.
That's a pretty standard Helvetica type, right?
Yeah, looks like it. Yeah.
So they probably forgot the font, and it's the replacement.
Even then, it wouldn't add spaces. That's what's so strange.
Well, depends.
Yeah, it depends. Fonts can mess up in lots of different ways.
Yeah. It first may have been hyphenated, and now it wasn't.
My God, they got lists for everybody except I don't see a designer. Art direct. Oh, designers. Here we go. Dan Berna and David Colderly. Head of production, Kevin Woof. Production manager, Jackie Fluke. Well, you guys...
you're putting them on blast.
Yeah. All 5 people are going to be like, oh, we don't like their production. All 5 people who are watching. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, what? Because if you're going to insist on putting all your credits before the first page of art, well, then you better get your typesetting on the back covered right. Because that's typesetting 101 right there. That ain't advanced. And speaking of published in France first, I don't know if this was, but I know his other book was. I got one of the newest Charles Burns books, comics. Of course, this one isn't technically a comic. It's an art book where he, much like me, makes covers to comics that don't exist. And so he's got a new comic out now. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was published in France last year first. So it's a whole book full of his comic book cover imagery, which is generally pretty good and sometimes really funny. But sometimes the graphic design lets me down. It doesn't say comic book cover enough for me. Like stuff like this, it's just a little too light on the type. And there's no trade dress. I prefer my fake comic book covers to be just a little bit more authentic.
Yeah.
But in general, I really like it. And he's got some fun stuff in here. Like, where's some? Like, sex decoy. Now, that's a great name, but, you know, these aren't his best his most creative images there. Number 16, Lost, Lonely, and Unloved. Huss is a great name, too. And he's got like, but some of them are just this symbol. I don't know what that symbol is supposed to mean. I'd rather it were a word, but it's not. So I guess these are comics from some foreign land. But like,
Yeah, he might be doing a parody of another cover.
Yeah, he
that's
might be.
Not American at all.
You were 100% right on that.
That doesn't look like any script I know.
Yeah. But like some of them he did back here for like his own character, where these were like the nicest ones, kind of. But this is one of his characters. I forget the name of it from this series I have of his.
Okay, that one looked Korean, but
I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Yeah, that doesn't look like anything.
But I like the drawings.
Yeah.
And these ones at least have a little more trade dress on them too. They're very golden ages ish. Oh, there's the back cover with that same guy from X'd Out, the X'd Out trilogy, I think it's called. But I think this one cost me $18. Once again, that's the thing about collecting. Once again, the whole, you're either the sucker or the asshole. Someone say something?
No, I hit something. I started playing.
Oh, okay. I think when I first put this on my Amazon wish list, it was like $25, but now it's come down to $18, and I'm like, all right, I'll get it now. Well, it's like when you're waiting. Well, it's not like this was ever in a comic, but it's like there's no reason to rush getting something if you're waiting for the collected edition, because they almost always go down in price. Eric P. Read Huss, rip the and slab sex decoy. Charles Burns' Final Cut. That's the name of his new one. That was printed, I think, in France first. Because I was looking at it last year going, hey, how come this isn't available in English? Because it wasn't made here. What other comics did you get, Wilson?
I picked up the Universal Monsters Frankenstein issue 3, but I think I'm missing an issue. Because I don't recall if I picked up issue 2, but I've enjoyed the previous one, which was Creature from the Black Lagoon. I hear Dracula is pretty good, although I haven't read that one, but that's out in trade. But this is the Frankenstein one, and I'm enjoying the cover. Because I think it is a 5th cover because of the way that yellow is, but I'm not positive.
Michael Walsh is a good artist too.
Mm-hmm. So it is a beautiful looking cover. I haven't even gone through the book yet, but warning, it's a bit gory, but here it is with someone's heart being ripped out by the looks of it.
Yeah. Michael Walsh did the Silver Coin. That was a nice one.
So it has a bit of Wrightson to it, I think.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
In the inking at least. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and I'm really enjoying the way it's colored as well. Each page seems to have its own palette, and it works. It works quite well for it.
Limited color can be very effective.
If done right, it definitely can be. Here are the alternate covers.
Lots of them.
At least 6 of them. One is in black and white. So
6 isn't even a lot these days. You're right.
Right, it's not. And this one is it's the same one, except one's in colored, one's in black and white. So it's not overly. But this was the one that I saw on the shelf, so that's the one that grabbed me to pick it up.
Here's a question for the group. I was talking on Facebook about this one. Who was it? Oh, good. I can't even remember. Let me see for a sec. It was Darren who showed he got that big, thick G.I. Joe 50-issue omnibus that Image just put out. Have you seen that one?
I think I saw an image of it.
Right.
It might have been Darren's photo.
Right. And I commented, I'm like, I asked him if he was going to read it or if it was a nostalgia buy. And that got me thinking that I think most omnibuses are nostalgia buys in terms of you never read them. You look through them, you pick them up, you go, ooh, I got it. But it's like, I showed this last week. I don't think Wilson and Chris have seen it. I picked up the Sigil omnibus. This is the cross-gen one from Marvel. And this I'm definitely going to read because I've never read it. But I actually was looking. This is the first omnibus I've bought since 2014. So it's been a while. And I got to thinking, even me, I bought a bunch of omnibuses over the years, but I've sold most of them once they raised up in price and I needed the money. I've got 2 omnibuses left. Ooh, balloons. I've got the Howard the Duck omnibus. I've never read it. I mean, I read the old issues back in the day. When I got it, I looked through it. I read a little here and there, but I never read the old omnibus all the way through. And I've got Captain America, Jack Kirby omnibus, the one from the Tales of Suspense on Up stuff. I've never read that one. Once again, I looked through it, read little parts here and there, put it on the shelf. And I was thinking about all the omnibuses I got rid of, or I sold. I had the Steve Ditko Spider-Man omnibus, never read it all the way through. I had the 2 Tomb of Dracula omnibuses, never read them all the way through. I had the Captain America Mad Bomb omnibus, never read it all the way through. So I'm like, I wonder if people actually ever, and almost everybody I know is like that. They don't actually read them. They get them because they love them. They love the issues and they want to have them.
I've seen people who have omnibuses, on their shelves, and they look beautiful on the shelf. And I could see that looks like a beautiful library of books I'll probably never would read.
Yeah.
But I would want them. And I would want them probably more so if I needed to look up something. I would grab that to look it up. If I need a particular story I wanted to double check on, I could see getting them. The only omnibuses that I have, I think I only have one. I have a Captain America one that I won at a comic book, some sort of comic book trivia night at a convention.
Right.
And I was really wanting the Spider-Man one, but I ended up winning the Captain America one. And I was like, oh, I'll trade this for someone who wants, who has a Spider-Man one. Never happened. Never heard anyone say that they wanted it. And I think I had only opened it up because I needed to reference something I was drawing. And I needed old Jack Kirby Captain America stuff. And I was doing something. I don't even remember what project it was for. But I wanted reference on Captain America. It might have been when I was working on the Stanley God Woke series. And I wanted get in a design sense of that time period. And again, that was like the only time I opened the book up. And once in a while, I open it up to look for something in particular. Did the sleeper appear in these issues or what have you? Because every few years, I like to do the joke. Shouldn't a sleeper be waking up about now to wreak havoc? Because it usually happened every few years. And when I was a kid, just getting into Captain America, the cartoons, when I discovered those, there was always an issue with the sleeper. And then there would be like a Treasury edition, and it would have a sleeper. And it was funny because it was a trope for a while. Then
Oh,
every
yeah.
few years, there'll be a sleeper awakening.
Sleeper number 3, sleeper
Yes.
number 4. So, it wasn't
Exactly.
Hitler who was always burying those sleepers?
I believe they were. I think they were leftover sleepers that he just buried all over the place.
Yeah.
And then it'll always be the sleeper awakes.
Yep.
And like, they haven't done that kind of story in a while. We should be
No.
getting a sleeper soon.
Those World War II era guys aren't around.
Oh, yeah. They're always thinking ahead.
Eric P says, I didn't get the G.I. Joe because I got the Kickstarter set of all of them. I'm going to read them. Oh, was that a Kickstarter set of individual comics or trades? By the way, I did finish reading the Immortal Hulk Omni, and it was great. I have just started a routine of reading 2 issues from an Omni each night when I can. Oh, that's a good routine. Plan to start my Legion of Superheroes Omni tonight. But like, there have been Omnis that I have bought to read, like the Death of Captain America omnibus I bought, and I read it because I wanted to read. That was actually a smaller one. But I think like a lot of omnibuses are just nostalgia purchases.
I think
like
so.
For me and for other people,
I could agree.
too. Yeah.
And yet, when I picked up the Masterworks, I read all of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as they came out, I would pick them up, but it wasn't like it was a straight run. So you get it, you know, the first one was like an X-Men, and then a Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and they would rotate about every 5 or so. And I think that might have been an easier read than trying to sit down and go through an omnibus.
Right, because omnibuses are big and clunky.
Yeah.
Eric P says the G.I. Joe Kickstarter was for 4 Omnis with all the Marvel issues. Okay. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that now that you mention it. But yeah, I realized, you know, I never read. I got 2 Omnis on my shelf. Like that Sigil one's going to get read because I bought it to read it. Because I've never read it, so there's not. Though there is nostalgia for me with cross-gen, it's not like it's not like I've read it before and picked it up because I loved it 25 years ago, as you know, with some other stuff.
Right.
Let's say, what else did I get the Omnis? Like, I bought the omnibuses. I don't have many more of, but they're not really the big ones. But DC's. I bought the Starman omnibuses, but I read all those because I never read them before. I sold them a couple years ago too. I bought the Jack Kirby Fourth World omnibuses. Once again, they weren't gigantic like the Marvel ones, but I'd never read all of Jack Kirby's Fourth World before, but I'd read all those. Sold those ones too because they went out of print and were worth money.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how there's like a short period where something's out of print and is worth money, and then it comes back into print, and not worth money anymore.
Yep.
62 Lefty Blues said, I bought the Star Trek Compendium for the reread without the DC ads. Easier to read than opening every single issue. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's easier just not to spend the money and go over to my shelf. I'll have the issues. Depends on how you have them stored is really what it comes down to, too.
So if you put them on the top shelf, not a good idea to read them.
Yep.
But
I was just giving. What was that?
I was going to say, at least being on the shelf, they're accessible.
Yeah.
Where I have mine in comic boxes in a closet, and you know, I might as well have tossed them away because I have not got back to them.
If I have comics and comic boxes in my closet, which I do, I may as well not have them.
Right.
But I've actually been cleaning off my shelves lately and giving stuff to my students. And my rule for like cleaning out series or whatever is if I look at something and say, am I ever going to read this? Because there's some stuff like Sigil. Sigil is over 20 years old now. And I've been meaning to read that series for at least 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it and say, am I ever going to read this again? Because there's plenty of stuff I want to reread from 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And if it takes me 15 years to get it, I might get to it. I might not be around anymore. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, I'll read this sometime in the future when you're 25. When
Right.
you're 58 and you'll go, I'll read this sometime in the future. There's less future.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of books. I'd look at them and go, I'm never going to. So I just cleared off my shelf of like 10 like mini series that I bought over the last few years that I went, Mark Miller's The Vampire Superhero Kids. I was like, I'll pass this on to my students. I'll pass it. And just last week, I passed out some stuff where, once again, I went high top shelf I went up to, and I'm like, what are these? And I pulled down about 5 or 6 graphic novels, indie stuff from about 15 to 20 years ago. I don't even remember it. I don't remember getting it. I don't remember what it's about. I don't even know who the creators are at this point. So I'm like, you know what? I can pass these on to them too.
Right.
If I bought it 20 years ago and I don't remember it, I can probably get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see these comments. Eric P., I do have Nocturnal's Omnis and haven't read them yet, but they aren't as big as the others, and I will get to them with my 2 issues a night plan. Yeah, 2 issues a night, I can understand getting through everything. 80 issues boarded and bagged. That's Starman, right?
Plus an annual and a 4-issue miniseries starring the Mist.
And didn't they put out an issue 81 years later? I think I have that.
I think so.
They with some like series in like 2010 or 2014 or something. They put out, and there was a Starman 81. Well, yeah, I've been getting rid. I started getting rid of things just so I can get more things. It's like I have no room for any. Like I didn't want to get that Sigil omnibus until I had a place to put it.
Right.
I had no places left. I was actually going to build some more shelves in this hallway over here because it's just an empty hall. I can put shelves up top here. But I was like, you know what? I should get rid of some stuff.
Right.
'Cause,
Yeah, I completely understand. I was moving things around, putting some books on the shelf just temporarily. Like they're not planning to stay there. I was just moving some stuff on the shelf, and I heard the wood make some noises, and it's like, whoa, maybe this is not the shelf for these books.
I actually had a shelf come down on me last year when, once again, back here in the laundry room, got a whole bunch of shelves, some really tall ones too, but they've mostly been for food all my life and stuff. And I've put other stuff in them over the years. And I decided I wanted to put, hold on, let me show you. I wanted to put my Dreams of Things covers in these portfolios because I just had them stacked up in a cabinet, which meant I couldn't get to them. 200 pieces of paper stacked in a cabinet means you can't get to them. So I decided I wanted to take as much of my artwork as I could and put it in these books and put it on a shelf where I could get to them. So, over a few months, I decided, I got a whole bunch of those books, transferred them. I've got 11 by 17 size. I have maybe at least 20 filled with paper. Well, guess what? Those shelves that have been there since the 60s, which are, 8 feet long, that are supposed to hold food, I put enough of those up there and they pancaked. I was like, ooh, I didn't think of that. And I've built shelves before, but I didn't build those ones.
Right.
So I went and got some brackets that could hold 500 pounds each, put them in the studs, and and put all this, but they came right down on me as I was putting more stuff. I'm like, no. And also, like I said, everything just came over. I was like, ooh, that's not good.
Not at all. Because sometimes, you don't think about how much these things weigh. I was doing a TikTok video about somebody who just reached 100 books. So
Right.
they just started collecting. They reached 100 books. They were talking about where they would store it. And I told a little story. It's like when I first got my books, when I was buying them, it took me a little while to get to 100 books. And I kept them in a shoebox for a long time. Because this is before I even knew that they had bags, let alone boards. Like bags I discovered in the middle of collecting. And so I started putting them bagged and boarded. But when I was a kid, I didn't like how flat the books would be, being bags and boards. I always enjoyed the little bit of that curve to a brand new comic book. Because not only did they have the books in the rack, sometimes the brand new books that they just got in would be on like a string. Like you see those photos of the old newsstands.
Right.
They would have a string and the books would be on top of that. And so to me it was like, oh, it's a fresh book. They have that curve to them. And so sometimes I would just, before I even discovered the bags, I would put the books into each other in the center. And it would just be a stack of books.
You stack them up like
I would stack them up that way just to keep them together. And it kind of gave you that curve. I don't even know if there's like an official name for that type of thing.
I have never heard anyone do that before.
And it was just something that I did because it looked like a fresher comic book in my mind.
That's called Wilsoning your books now.
Okay. So I would do that. And then eventually I started putting them in bags. And my first box was a shoebox. And then later it graduated up to a small milk crate. And I kept them like that because I didn't know boxes existed yet. And they may not have. To me, they didn't exist. And it wasn't until I discovered probably in Forbidden Planet that they started carrying those boxes. And my first set of boxes were the long boxes because they haven't made the short boxes yet, as far as I was aware of. And so it took a while to get a full long box, and then the next one. But it was a lot of fun having them in milk crates. And then when I was working in the comic book shop, that's where I realized short boxes are the way to go because we had to keep moving these things around. And then it's like, so I had recommended if you go to, because they had posted, oh, I didn't know, where to keep them. I have them in shoe boxes. I want to graduate to long boxes. And I was like, hold on, before you decide on a long box, be aware of the short boxes. Because you're going to move these things around a lot before you realize it. And it's like I said, I still have some of the long boxes, but that's also the very bottom of the comic book closet is, that's the foundation. And then everything else is on top of it because it's just easier to move the short boxes around.
I believe my first comic book container / box was a hamper.
Okay.
It was, about the size of a comic book and vertical. So I could stack comics in it. The downside to that was my parents could punish me by taking away my comics for a period of time.
But you made luckily, an easy Cavern case.
I had a secret stash of treasury editions that weren't in there. So that's when I read my treasury editions.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got some Shade news here, and Starman, the Shade. Oh yeah, the Shade also. Because I know in the omnibus there was like a Shade mini series, I think, that was in the middle of the Starman omnibus, and issue 81, and there was a later Shade series of 11 issues. Yeah, I think it was only like a 4-issue Shade series that was in the omnibus. The 2012 Shade series was 12 issues.
Yeah,
Good evening, Tit Goblin. How are you doing?
Hey, Tit Goblin, how's it going?
I have the trade for that Shade series. They were trying to make Shade interesting enough for the New 52, while in the new continuity, while trying hard not to get rid of the Starman series, which didn't always work. I mean, all of a sudden, Deathstroke showed up in his new 52 costume, and it didn't really mesh well. The story is basically the Shade world hopping, going from country to country.
Yeah, I don't remember that New 52 Shade at all.
Mm.
Where is the book I want? Did I write anything in it? Can't remember if I wrote anything down for this week or not. Good thing I write things down. No, I did not.
Did you guys talk about the passing of Greg Hildebrandt?
No, I don't think we mentioned that today. I completely forgot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Greg Hildebrandt.
Yep.
Passed yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, I know the Hildebrandt brothers most from their Hobbit work and stuff around the late 70s, early 80s, when portfolios were a thing, art portfolios.
Yeah, I discovered them during the time they were doing when the trading cards was a big thing. The art of.
Okay,
Right. I had gotten the art of, and they had a mixture of stuff, mostly the Hobbit stuff, and eventually their comic book stuff a few years later.
What comics did they do?
They did covers.
Yeah, mostly covers.
Mostly covers. I remember there being a Wolverine cover. I think they even did a card set.
Do you remember when they stopped painting together? Because for a while it was the Hildebrandt brothers. Then sometime in the 90s, maybe it was, they I always wondered, like I split why they decided not to paint together anymore. Were they just bored of it? Greg and what was his brother's name who died?
Tim.
Because
I always I never really looked into it. I always thought it's because Tim passed first. Was the only reason why they stopped working together.
I think they stopped working together before then. I'm not 100% sure.
I am not either.
I have a vague memory of me wondering why they stopped working together. And they said Tim died. How long ago was it since Tim died? A long time now, right?
Quite a while ago.
Let's see. 62 Lefty Blues says Shade's daughter was in Starman 2. Okay. Tit Goblin says going well, getting ready for the big craft fair, 50th anniversary one. Ooh, nice. 50th anniversary for you or the craft fair? Their comic book trading cards were great. Yeah. The 90s were a golden age of comic book trading cards. But yeah, I remember them. Did you ever meet them?
I may have met Greg during a convention. I've only really dealt with them over the phone. Okay. And because Jean was their art rep as well, I only ever dealt with Jean. So I've only ever spoken to her over the phone. But I'm sure there had to be at least a comic book event, because I do remember meeting at least Greg at some point.
Yeah. Are the Hildebrandt brothers known in Europe, Paulo?
No.
Not even their Lord of the Rings stuff?
Well, I haven't seen it.
Okay. It was a while ago. Their Lord of the Rings
Mhm.
stuff, I think, was the 70s. So
Probably at the time it
Tim
wouldn't be
passed.
relevant.
Tim passed in 2006.
Okay. Tit Goblin says the 50th craft fair will be his 32nd year. Whew. Time just keeps marching forward.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, what else did I get this week? 2 Tony Fleece books. Feral and Uncanny Valley. After the ending of his Local Man book, which he was drawing, these ones he's writing. But Uncanny Valley is the one where cartoons are real and only like small children can see them, but adults really can't see them. And the story of this one kid who's part cartoon. But this is the story of how cartoons became real. And as you can see, it starts with Gertie the dinosaur from Winsor McKay. And then this actually really, it's kind of a really touching story, this one too. And this one actually made me think of Scott Koblish. He posted something on Facebook about when Steamboat Willie and Mickey Mouse became public domain. And he was like, really, let's see someone do something better than with Mickey Mouse than Walt Disney has, because all the stuff I've seen so far is crap. I'm like, well, give it time. But this,
Right.
he actually used Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie very effectively in the telling of the story of cartoon characters and how they became real and how they were still sort of secondary to human. As real as they were still secondary to human beings. And eventually it was Mickey / Steamboat Willie. And it's the story of the kid, the kid who's the star of this book. His mother is in the story too. And the villain, I guess the villain of the piece was introduced a couple issues ago. And we just found out this villain who's sort of, which I didn't notice, who's sort of based on that Sorcerer movie, is actually Mickey Mouse in there. But really well done issue, really touching. Nice story of the cartoons and how they became real and what it cost them to become real. And the other cartoon-based one is Feral, which is the story of a bunch of house cats. It's a zombie story with these house cats running from the zombies, but it's rabies that are, it's not really zombies. It's a especially virulent outbreak of rabies. So it's the story of these cats trying to survive. And after last issue, which was, sort of reminiscent of The Walking Dead, where one of our lead characters got bit and, eventually perished, this was a little happier, this issue. But both of these are very good. Tony Fleece is the writer on it. And it's funny, Tony Fleece is the writer and artist on Local Man, which once get canceled. But Forstner and Rodriguez and Simpson is the colorist. The what's her name? As I was told one week here, Trish Forstner draws all the cats, and Tone Rodriguez draws all the realistic backgrounds and stuff. So they kind of have a split up of duties here. She does the cartoony stuff. He does the realism stuff. And who draws Uncanny Valley is drawn by Dave Watcher. And I think you say his name, Tony Fleece. I don't even know. I don't know how to pronounce Fleecs.
Looks like fleece to me.
It looks like fleece to me. Could be something else. After all this week, I just found out that I might be saying Pat Brousseau's name wrong. He was a bullpenner before me, so I never actually met him. But he's a friend on Facebook. He's still a letterer out there. And he said something about somebody pronouncing his name wrong. People always pronounce their name wrong. And how's his name spelled? Brouss, or is it Broussseau? And I think he didn't tell us how to pronounce his name in that post. But it sounded to me like he said Brousseau was wrong. And then I was like, I remembered there was a football player named Junior Seau, Seau. So I'm like, maybe he pronounces his name Bro Seau. I'm like, I have no idea now.
I always thought it was Brousseau.
Me too.
So,
But
and
I don't know if it actually is.
He's never corrected me. I've only met him a few times. But
I've never actually met him, never heard him say his name. But from that post, I then thought Brousseau wasn't right. And I was like, huh?
In French, it's Brosso.
Yeah, I don't think he's going with the French version, but maybe he is.
Okay, but it'll be closer. Brosso instead of Brousseau. There's no U there. Yeah, Brosso.
Brosso, that could be it.
That could be it, maybe.
Yeah, I have no idea. 62 Lefty Blues says Terry Brooks covers too. Oh yeah, that's who the Hildebrandt brothers did. Terry Brooks was the writer, and Star Wars posters. Brosso.
So it looks like there was something I was reading on Wikipedia that they worked together, and then it was about 12 years later they came back to work on stuff for Marvel. So I guess they were working together with stuff, and then they're painters, illustrators. They started taking other jobs, and then at some point they both came back for Marvel projects.
Together, you mean?
Yes, they came back together. They said they reunited after 12 years. They reunited to work on projects for Marvel, Stanley, and stuff like that. So I guess when they were doing Marvel stuff, there was a break I wasn't really aware of. But I didn't discover them until, I guess, during their break time.
I guess it was 12 years that they worked apart.
Right.
Okay. That's a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
Chris has worked with his brother. Haven't you, Chris?
Yep. Yeah. He's written some of those backup pieces for Ahoy Comics.
Ah, all right.
That I provided illustration for.
Okay. Does your brother draw?
He doesn't, but I always thought he was good at drawing.
Okay.
I basically learned by copying him. So if he stuck with it, he'd probably be doing something very similar to what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine. But I think he's still got it in him.
Right. But
it's just,
even people with natural talent don't always want to draw.
Yeah, it's hard to just sit and be like, okay, I'm going to do this and nothing else.
Right.
For a long time.
Yeah.
especially when you have other stuff to do.
That's much more fun and exciting to you. Yeah, I always say that back in my art school days, almost everyone stops drawing at some point. There's that too. I mean, once people have jobs, 9-to-5 jobs they settle into, they stop drawing. That's kind of normal. I mean, they even told us that in art school. They're like, only 1 out of 10 of you will have anything to do with drawing in your career. So that's standard stuff. But one thing I noticed that sometimes the most talented students gave up first after school because they were coasting. on their natural talent. But then when they're sort of out there in the job world and they have to work hard to get more talented, they ain't interested in that. And so they just kind of fade away and find something else to do. And sometimes it's the guys who weren't as naturally talented in the beginning, but worked really hard, get talented later on. Do you remember when it's in some issue of Marvel Age? Chris Bacalo brought in some of his earliest tryout stuff to publish in Marvel Age, just to show how, why they turned him down. How like little skills he had at the beginning. And it is amazing how much he grew from those first pages till, Generation X, just 5 years later, if that. And he really, I mean, his early pages really weren't that good, but you never know who's going to keep at it and turn it around. That's just it. You just never know.
Very true, yeah.
I never thought Dan Slott would be a star writer.
Yeah.
Not because his writing was bad, but just because he hung around for years and years not getting regular work, but getting some editors kind of liked him. They'd throw him a job here and there. And I fully expected him to, because almost everybody does. If you're one of those guys who hangs around getting a little work here and there because the editors like you or whatever, usually eventually, the editors leave. You have to go and get more money elsewhere or whatever. So hardly any of those type guys ever become big names. Dan Slott did. I was like, wow, more power to him. That I didn't expect it. Like, it had nothing to do with the quality of his work. Had to do with the position he was in the 90s. Most people can only last in that position for so many years before it's time to get a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. There are writers that I knew that were really good, and unfortunately they couldn't stay with it because, again, as you're saying, editors leaving. I know during one of the cuts, the layoffs, during the mass layoffs, I knew one writer who lost every one of his editors.
Yeah.
And so no one knew his work. And he ended up, he continued writing, but he just wasn't writing comic books anymore because every editor that knew him was overnight gone from Marvel. And I'm sure that's happened to a lot of artists as well.
Yeah. That reminds me too, someone that happened it to, Joe Rosas.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Pipeline Comics, European Comics, North American Perspective. A blog. I don't know where I discovered it. But he just wrote a nice little post on praise for the journeyman colorist who is Joe Rosas. Did you guys know Joe?
I know the name. I don't know.
I'm still Facebook friends with him, so I showed him that too. But he started out as one of Romita's Raiders, and then he became a colorist. And he was, before the digital age, he was one of the top colorists in the business. Jim Lee specifically requested him on X-Men. That's how much of sort of an impact Joe's coloring work was making. And everybody started copying him too. But he's just not a computer guy. So he was, like I said, he was one of the top colorists in the early 90s in Marvel. But when everything went computerized, he didn't make the transition because he's just not a computer guy. But like I said, he was as in demand as you could be as a colorist in the early 90s. And that's a nice little piece on him there written. But Joe went from a Raider, then he was in the bullpen for a while, then a full-time colorist.
Yeah, I just found that article. Yes, so I don't think I ever met Joe face to face, unless he was a New Yorker that did come in to pick up his color guide.
He was a New Yorker. But what year did you start?
I started in 94.
Yeah, then you probably... Joe was probably still around in 94.
Yeah. Well, I started in 94, but I think Art Returns was 95.
Yeah, you probably... He was around a bit, so he was always in. Because he was a bullpen too, so...
Yeah, so I would have known him as a colorist who came in to pick up his color guides.
I hope he kept his color guides. I don't know how many, because I can remember Paul Becton throwing away all his color guides, and I was just like, yeah.
And it's amazing too, to get off on a little bit of a tangent of how I think Rob Liefeld has a piece of artwork that's being sold right now that's going for a ton of money. I think it may be the first appearance of Deadpool on the page.
$400,000, right? He was posting something
like that he had posted. I don't even think it's sold yet. I think that's where it was going up to at the time. And it's amazing because I also know a lot of artists is no longer drawing on paper.
Yeah.
They're drawing directly on the computer, and it's like, then you're not going to see that type of money at all. And color guides, I sold a good chunk of mine I sold them back when we were kind of still doing color guides, so they weren't that hard to find. And but now they seem to be going up there, especially obviously key books and stuff like that. I bought a couple of color guides from Wonder Woman issue just because they were being sold by her name escapes me right now. A DC colorist, Patricia. I don't remember her last name, but I have picked up some color guides just so it's like, let me get some like classic color guides too, because I have a few. I still have like the very first one pinup I ever colored. That was my first gig, and it was for the last issue of Ghost Rider 2099. Joe, I think it was Joe Andriani who was editing that book, says, "Hey, do you want to color a pinup for the last issue of the book?" And it's like, sure, why not? So that was like the first comic book published image. But before that, I did it for the catalogs. So that was kind of like part of the gig. But it was like, with the catalog stuff, it only appeared in the catalog. It wasn't the official book itself. But the Ghost Rider one was the official book. And of course it was the last issue. So there's no credit page that has my name on it. But again, it's like artwork, physical artwork. Not many people are doing it anymore.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And you can't even tell anymore what's digital and what's physical.
Yeah.
Good thing Chris is still out there making recreations.
Yep.
He'll give you physical artwork anytime you pay him to. And let's see, the last comic I got this week is the new issue of Spawn. Still only $2.99.
Spawn, which you bought for the price of one Spawn.
Yep, one Spawn it cost me. It's been a fun story. I like Rory McConville as a writer. Brett Booth doing a good job on the art. Adelso Corona inks. There's also way fewer inkers than there used to be. Being that everything's digital. It's like you don't need inkers anymore because you do that right in the digital drawing stage. Robert Nugent, colors. Tom Orzechowski, lettering.
How old is Tom Orzechowski?
Older than me. I know that. I think he's like 10 years older than me. So he must be between 65 and 75, I would think. He's been around for a while. But there's no retirement plan for comic book letterers, so you keep on lettering. Before your clock gets to zero.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun,
The
dun,
clock
dun.
is back. That's great.
Aren't they in a civil war in hell?
No, that's over.
Ah.
Civil War in Hell ended with 250. And since 250, they've been in a war with the vampires on Earth. Billy Blood, I think, is the leader of the vampires. So after the Civil War in Hell, his ex-wife Wanda takes over as the Queen of Hell, cuts off kicks everybody out of hell and cuts it off. And there was some magical point that got cut off. So everybody on Earth from heaven and hell who got their superpowers from heaven and hell lost their superpowers. And then Billy Blood, the head of the vampires, says, hey, this seems like a good time to kill everybody from heaven and hell, and I can take over. So that's what's been going on the last 8 issues as Spawn wants to try to stop him. But as a little side quest, one of Spawn's buddies got turned into a vampire. So not only does he want to stop the vampires, he wants to find a cure for vampirism to help his buddy. And as of this issue, it looks like the Angels got themselves some cyber enhancements. They were like, did you think we were just going to lay down and die to all you vampires? So now we've got Cyber Angels.
Nice. That's a good name too.
Cyber Angel.
I don't know if that's in. I don't know if that name is in there, but it should be.
It definitely should be. Cyber Angel is a good
Definitely
name.
should be.
Tom is 71 years old.
71.
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever met Tom Orzechowski. I can't remember.
I don't believe I have at all.
I met him once.
Eric
came up to my table at he came up to my table in Artist Alley in San Diego.
So he must be a West Coast guy then, right?
Yeah, but he approached me and he's like, yeah, I wanted to come meet you. John Babcock just thinks the world of you. John Babcock's always saying these great things about you. He says that you do your own lettering. I'm like, yeah.
He was and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah. But that's sweet of Babcock to say anything nice, and Tom was very sweet in person.
Mm-hmm. But you just never thought of John Babcock saying nice things about you to Tom Orzechowski.
Well, yeah, like why would that even come up?
Why would John Babcock mention you?
But I guess, in the world of lettering, and me being a young bullpenner in the day and learning the ways of lettering by hand,
Did you learn from John Babcock? He was gone by the time you got there, right?
No, he was there all the time.
Oh, okay. He would come visit, right? He'd be in.
He was always around, because he was still doing a lot of freelance jobs. So
right.
he'd come and just hang out.
Now I have memories of him. I think I have a photo at his computer over in the Romita Raiders area next to your desk.
There you go.
So that's where you probably know him from. Yeah. Okay. Eric P. says, is it now reconstruction in hell? We wouldn't know because we haven't gone back to hell since the door to it has been closed. Could be, could not be. Who knows? Can't get in or out of heaven or hell. I can't believe how many issues of Spawn I now have. Because what are we up to? 358? I think I must have between 40 and 50 issues of Spawn in a row now. I'm just like, wow, how did that happen? Time just keeps marching forward, and I just keep buying Spawn for still only $2.99. Now I almost feel bad it's not $4. Eric P says the question is, will you get the Spawn Omnis? No, I won't. Matter of fact, I was just thinking about if I should give these issues of Spawn away or not. See what it is? When giving these away to students, I can't give them too much because it'll overwhelm them. They don't have the space. So I have to give them, series that are like 6 to 8 issues. I can't give them, 40 issues of Spawn. They'll be like, what am I supposed to do with all these?
You read them all. There's going to be a test.
Though there's one student of mine who's like, he's like, I'm building my library. Come on. I'm like, all right, I'll bring you some more stuff. You may as well.
Yep.
So there's 4 Spawn compendiums, and they're as big as that that G.I. Joe one. They're all 50 issues. Those compendiums have 50 issues each in them.
Wow.
It's like, whoa. Them's a lot of issues. I wish I could remember the topic that flew out of my head a little while ago. I was like, oh, I have to bring that up. What was it? I don't know.
Is Spawn the highest number continuing book?
I think it might be.
That's never, because I don't think
that's never been
ever
rebooted.
Took a break. Right, it's never been rebooted, and he's never, I don't think, taken a break.
Don't Marvel and DC though? Don't they put legacy numbers on their books?
Yeah, they don't even count anymore. They take breaks. They're not continually numbered.
Yeah, they keep changing it. Because it's the short-sightedness of, oh, no one wants these high numbers.
You can pretty much put any number you want on a Marvel or DC book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's really paying attention.
No.
No, not at all.
So yeah, I think it is the highest numbered continually published one that I can think of. Because
the
only one close is Savage Dragon, and it hasn't reached 300 yet.
Right.
Usagi Yojimbo now has legacy numbers on it, but it's gone through publishers different. I mean, that still counts as something. I don't know what it counts at. I mean, that's one guy doing one book for 270 issues. That's its own thing.
Yeah. That's his own category, basically.
Right, but he's had a bounce from publisher to publisher. So,
right.
Like I said, right now, Dark Horse is putting legacy numbers on it, even though it's now being published in miniseries. Like I said, counts for something, but not continually highest numbered book.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
Do I have a Reed, Rip, and Slab? I do. Let's see. Let me open those up. Pick a decade. Let me see what I got here. Shall we do something old?
1970.
We always do the 70s.
Do we?
Yeah.
Lately, yeah.
What do you got? What do you got in the 50s?
In the 50s, let's see. 1955 May. All right, let's see. We got some.
They look the beginning like of the Comics Code.
Teen books. We have Candy, number 55. Pinky Lee, number 2. And TV Teens, number 8. Here are 3 that I've never heard of. And the first thing that jumps out at me is the bathing suit on Mopsy is a color hold. I noticed that because when I did my video on the EC Comics covers, I noted there was a lot of red line in there for color holds. And I was like, I wonder how often they did color holds like in the olden days in comic. And here's one right here. Because if you look at the woman in red here, there's no black line around her bathing suit. It's all red.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a color hold. Whenever there's not a black line around something, on the original art, they have to draw it in red and then tell the separator that it's a color hold, which you often cost a little extra. So I wonder how often it happened.
Okay, I'm going to read Candy and rip Pinky Lee and slab Mopsy.
Let's see. Ted is looking for a job that fits his abilities. Yeah, who's going to hire anyone as a television watcher? Oh my goodness, that joke is old, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
That's
Holy
early
cow.
television. That's
You can put video games in there and it's the same joke. You can put all sorts of stuff in there and it's the same joke.
completely.
Wow.
Yeah, but I want to see what he actually does as a television watcher. That's why I want to read
You're
it.
interested in his television watching day.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to
Pinky
read
Lee's
that
cover. Pinky Lee's cover does nothing for me.
Oh, I like that guy's face. Look at that. He's all excited and a little creepy.
I really like that TV Teens cover, but I want to read that story, but I'm going to have to slab it because it's just a really good cover. So that means I'm going to
Gladys
have
Parker. I wonder who Gladys Parker was.
go to read Candy, and unfortunately that means I rip Pinky Lee.
The lifeguard here taught me to swim in only 6 lessons. I guess he didn't think you were so cute. We used 12 lessons just to teach me to float. Yeah, that's a color hold. That's interesting. It's a color hold.
It is.
A Mopsy doesn't come from comics. It's a comic strip character.
Oh,
That is-
okay. I wonder.
I've heard of Mopsy before.
Did Gladys Parker have anything to do with the comic strip? I wonder.
She created it in 1939.
Uh-huh. I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that they paid the extra for the color hold. Though now that I look at this one, Pinky Lee is kind of begging to be ripped because it's got that line right down the middle of the panels, and it looks like it has a fold in it. So
I think it was probably folded. And also, if you look at it, it's one of those burst covers. So I'm wondering if that's actually the first page inside the book.
yeah, because he's looking pretty creepily at that person he's poking in the head. Eric P says Marvel and DC could just put a month and year in each book and call it a day. Enough with the numbers. Tit Gobbler, how many Archies are published if you put them all together? I wonder if anyone has every Archie publication. I have no idea. That's an interesting question. Read TV, rip candy. It's ripping candy. Slab Pinky. So he likes that Pinky Lee cover. That Pinky Lee pops. Yeah, it's got the nice heads are in the border. Eric P is going to slab Candy, read Mopsy, and rip Pinky. Dolphin the guy on the couch on Candy. Flamingos glaring at Ted from the top of the TV.
I'm putting a dolphin on in place of the TV. Let's see the guy do his television watching while just staring at a dolphin.
With antennas coming out of his head.
Yeah.
Pinky
And
Lee was a burlesque comedian.
Yeah.
That's why he's got that goofy comedian face.
Mhm.
Now I'm interested in Pinky Lee.
Yeah, I'm going to put the flamingos on the other side of the ripped page, looking at, staring at Pinky.
You know what? I was thinking the same thing, putting them in a panel.
Oh, by the way, Pinky Lee's comic was published by Marvel.
Oh, that was a Marvel book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, it's got the Atlas Globe.
Ah.
So Moopsie ran 3 decades as a comic strip.
3 decades for Mopsy?
Yep, from 1939 to 1965 as a comic strip.
Oh, I wonder why it's TV Teens presents Mopsy.
TV Teens is probably the main title. Mopsy may not appear regularly, or
okay.
What's that publisher?
62 Lefty Blues said Stan Lee did some Pinky Lee scripts. And Morris S. Weiss drew the cover. I don't think I've heard of Morris S. Weiss.
Oh, Morris Weiss drew a bunch of teen humor stuff for Marvel in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the late 40s, you can already find some Morris Weiss, some Maury Weiss in so he did Hattie of Hollywood, and before that he was doing the Millie the Model.
Okay.
He did Millie the Model for a number of years.
And that candy cover I could not find an artist for. But it looked familiar.
Yeah. Almost like it's not Tim DeCarlo, but kind of looks like it.
It's got, you know what it is? It's got a Milton Caniff look. Whoever the guy is being influenced by Milton Caniff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why it looks familiar, because Ted there looks an awful lot like Terry.
I'm going to replace the blonde on the Moopsie cover with the dolphin. And I'm going to have the flamingos on the shoulders of the guy on Candy, so they're all watching TV together.
Ah. Eric P. says, note all 3 books have large, obvious comics code stamps on them. Yeah. Eric P. also says, those haircuts on the Candy cover are kind of amazing. Ted has a little Dennis the Menace as a teen who slimed down look. Yeah, he's got a little Dennis the Menace in him, too. I'm gonna put the flamingos behind Mopsy and her friend there. They're gonna get in the conversation a little bit. They're gonna be maybe right in between them, in the background. And I'm gonna replace. I'm gonna replace and the Pinky Lee cover in the top left panel. That little guy who's in blue, who's standing in front of the fence, is now going to be a dolphin. For no reason. All nice design on these covers too.
Oh yeah.
Gladys Parker died in 1966. She was only 58.
Ah.
She died of cancer.
She also designed Moopsie after herself.
Okay. Which one is Moopsie?
The one with the color hold.
The color hold, yeah, okay. Yeah, because they wouldn't make Moopsie. They wouldn't imply that the Moopsie is the ugly one. The one the lifeguard didn't like as much. Moopsie's got to be the one with 12 days of swimming practice.
I'm finding an artist that's kind of associated with the Candy around that time, which was Harry Sale, but the most of the art is unidentified. I know Harry Sale worked on the Human Torch in the mid-40s.
62 Lefty Blue says Moopsy has a chick young blondie look. Oh yeah, I can see that. Now that you mention it, yeah. Early blondie. Back when blondie was a flapper in the 20s.
Yeah. There's a lot of covers of her when she's in bikini. It's usually a red bikini or a red bathing suit.
Red two-piece.
Yeah.
Eric P says, I wonder who owns the rights to these books, or are they public domain?
Candy may be public domain because that's quality, and if DC didn't buy that, it wasn't renewed. Mopsy is not public. Is probably not public domain because it was owned by one of the. It was controlled by one of the big syndicates.
Right, one of the comic
associated newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not giving anything up.
And Pinky Lee, because the character is licensed. The comic itself may not have been renewed, but you can't use. I'm not sure if you can use Pinky Lee's likeness even today.
Yeah, you can use the likeness of anyone who's dead, but I don't know if they could use that art.
Right, and besides I think the hat is part of the costume. So it would be trademark.
Trademark. Who knows? Pinky Lee.
Pinky Lee died in 1993.
I
mean, so that's a 1955 comic. The guy was a comedian. He managed to survive until 1993. Comedians don't live that long.
No, not usually.
Okay.
But I really like. Oh, I didn't even figure out which one I think I'm going to. I want to read Pinky Lee now. But how good? I don't like Stan Lee's writing, so I'm going to rip Pinky Lee. I'm going to read Candy and slab Mopsy because I like that Mopsy cover. It'll look good on a slab leaning somewhere.
It would. Because I like how the top almost gives it one of those ash can looks.
Yeah. That's I think it's definitely the most golden age looking of them because there was a lot of golden age. They did that top color in the logo. Which brings me to I wish this comics Charles Burns book was as well designed. The images inside, the comic covers inside were as well designed as these ones. I think because these are all nicely designed, I have to say. Even if they've got lots of stuff. Do you have a read, rip, and slab, Chris? What do you got here?
Well, I want to read the Mopsy one because that's the one you were saying has the color holds on it.
Yep.
On the cover, so I want to see if there's more of that going on inside. That's really all I have to add to this. That's the only thought that I've had this entire time.
He's too busy coloring in Photoshop to have thoughts.
Yep.
I know that. I know. I've been there. Let's see. Which one of these would you like a facsimile of? Probably Mopsy.
Yeah.
Probably Mopsy, I would say. Mopsy, Candy, Pinky Lee would be my facsimile order. And let's see. What would you pay for a facsimile of Mopsy? $7.99? $8 would you pay?
I would pay the $4.95 is what I paid for the Marvel one.
Okay, no more than that?
No more than that. Unless...
Because it'll be small press. Eric P. also says $4.99.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to pay a penny, but realistic, I think I'd go $6. I think if they put this out from a Mopsy This cover facsimile, I'd go $6.
$6?
Yeah.
I could see $6.
Yeah. You could talk. I could on a slow week.
You could talk
At
me
the
into
comic
$6.
shop.
Yeah.
I think I'd $6 would be an easy buy. Candy, $5. Pinky Lee, I don't know that I'd spend more than $3 on Pinky Lee.
So you buy Candy and Mopsy at $6 each, and you get the Pinky Lee for free.
There you go.
That's the deal I want. Buy 2, get 1 free.
That sounds like a good deal. That was a nice visit to the 1950s. I enjoyed that.
Definitely was.
Some comics we'd never seen before, but really nicely designed ones.
So TV Teens might reprint Mopsy Sunday strips because everything inside is one page.
Ah, okay.
All right.
That would make sense.
Yeah, the comics started with Ozzy and Babs, drawn by Chick Stone. That lasted until issue number 5. And issue number 6 as Don Winslow of the Navy. And then Mopsy takes over from number 7. So that's why it's TV Teens featuring Mopsy.
Okay. How many issues did it run?
Until number 13.
All right.
So not long.
Mopsy. It's fun learning about new stuff. And it's amazing how many comic strips there were that we've never heard of.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was even like Mopsy may have only run in the Pacific Northwest. There were so many strips that, came and went, were around for a good decade or so, but, never in the Northeast. They were like regional strips. Good evening, God of Grind. You're just here in time for us to end. And make some confetti fall. All right, we should wrap up and let Paulo get to bed.
Well, I'm already on winter time, so we actually started an hour earlier for me.
We change our clocks this weekend, so you get 1 week of winter time of being a little earlier. And I will have to check with my students again how many of them knew the clocks changed.
They don't notice. It happens automatically.
Yeah. And when you think they're like the clocks changed, because when you think about it, they don't have anything that changes automatic.
They don't physically have to change it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only I think I have one clock radio that I would need to change into place.
They don't remember watching the news.
Yeah.
Where they were. Remember, folks, tonight you have to change the clock.
No. They don't have watches. They have, the time is on their phones. Time is on their tablets. Time is on their computers. You don't have to change any of that. It changes by itself. So it's like, I remember finding this. I think it was either last year or the year before, talking to them. They remember the clocks changed. What are you talking about? The clocks changed.
They've never heard of daylight savings time.
They've never paid attention to it because it happens when they're asleep. All their clocks change automatically. At least like 6 out of the 12, it was like that.
Don't they notice that when it changes from winter to summer, they lose an hour of sleep and they're cranky?
No.
They don't get cranky if they lose an hour of sleep?
They don't. I think some of them don't have regular hours of sleep.
Huh.
They kind of go to bed around some time and wake up around some time. Because they don't have jobs.
And they're going to become artists, so they
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody have a good one out there. Here's some balloons for you.
Let's get balloons.
And we'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye.